Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Higginbotham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And we always love guest speakers coming on the show. That's why we're excited to have with us Michelle Johns, licensed professional counselor, mental health service provider, clinical mental health counselor, and so much more. Michelle, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well this morning. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's exciting to be here with you and share some information that I think is really important with your audience.
Absolutely. Well, when you talk about mental health, wellness, all of this, it's an exciting conversation and obviously a much needed conversation. Let's start though with a little bit of your background. So give us some of your background and what led you to become a speaker.
Well, first and foremost, my background is pretty broad. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I always wanted to be a psychologist growing up. In fact, in middle school and high school, I devoured books about psychology and worked for a psychologist after school, but that's not the trajectory that life took for me. And I ended up going to college and having a traditional career in the corporate sector. And I had a really good career. In fact, I think I had a great career in the transportation industry where I've worked for 15 years. And the company I worked for was bought by a larger company. And my job moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Being married and my husband here, we weren't going to move to Phoenix, Arizona. He actually made more money than me, so we weren't going to move for my job. And so we stayed here. And in that, I had another little transition. I went into the mortgage business industry and I was working a lot and had, again, a successful career in the mortgage business, but it required a lot of time. I was on the phone from the time I woke up in the morning until late evening and somehow thought I was doing everything really well. Like I could leave the office and be at events for my children, make sure I took my children to events. And I had a great assistant, but I was still on the phone all day long with either a realtor or whoever was buying the loan, underwriting the loan, the appraisers, making sure the loan closed on time. It was so important. And my daughter looked at me one night. I was taking her to a practice or somewhere, and she said, "I hate your job." And I thought, oh, and she said, "You are always on the phone. You're here with me, but you're really not here." And that hit me so hard because I really thought I was doing everything so well that I had what we would call work-life balance. And she was going into her senior year of high school, and I went home that night and I said to my husband, "I've been working since I was 14 years old and I'd like to take a break. She's about to leave our home and go off to college, and I'd just like to take some time and be with our family." And he said, "Great, go for it." So I thought I would take a year off. And in that year, while my children were at school, I thought, well, I need something to do. So I started playing tennis. Jeremy, you'll appreciate that. I'm a 2-5 rock star and will be for the rest of my life. That's just as good as it's going to get. So, for anybody that doesn't know what that means, it means I'm a beginner tennis player forever. But I do enjoy playing. I just am not, I'm not great at the ball coordination. Let me go run. I can run. I'm a great runner. But anyway, so I started playing tennis and I started practicing yoga, and I started kind of having my own internal transformation. I looked around at my life and I thought, how did I get here? And I can go into a little bit more detail in that later, but you asked how I got to be a therapist. But in this transformation, well, maybe I should stay here with it. I started to look at my life and I looked at where I had come from. And I'd had a lot of success in my professional career. I led, let me just say this, Salesforce automation. I started in the workforce when laptops weren't a thing, GPS wasn't a thing, and I was in the transportation industry. And I got to be in the projects of our company where we were testing GPS devices for these 18-wheelers and our drivers. And I got to lead the Salesforce automation project where we were literally putting laptops into the hands of our Salesforce. And so I had a fascinating career and I'd been really successful in life. But as I started practicing yoga and I had this time to finally breathe in life, I looked back and I had a pretty adverse childhood growing up. I really did. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, but it's important to know that I had this epiphany of like, how did I end up in this Germantown, Tennessee, great suburb community with children in great schools? My family is really functioning very well. And by all accounts, and according to the statistics, I shouldn't be here. And I have a lot to be grateful for. But how have I been doing what I've been doing? And I started to kind of have my own internal transformation. And it started with a little bit of a conflict of like, I've done really well. And yet I know I could have done better. And looking back at my life and my life stories, how am I optimizing the life I'm living and not creating balance in my life, but creating harmony in my life? And so as I started to do my own internal work, which I would say was more of like a 7-year journey, I went back to school and got a degree in psychology. And then I went on to get my master's in counseling. And that's where I sit today. So all of that to tell you how I got here.
Well, but I think those are things that people can relate to, right? Like the internal struggle and your child saying, hey, you think you're doing the right thing, but hey, I see you on the phone all the time and you're missing the opportunities to connect and be here for me. And so sometimes, children see the things that we don't see, right? And so
Right.
that's where I think the internal conflict, the soul searching, but also too then like, okay, finding yourself, transforming yourself then leads to this passion to help others transform themselves as well. So talk about the keynote then, because you've got a keynote obviously that's popular that you're doing quite a bit of. So go ahead and dive into this keynote.
Yeah, so the title of my keynote is It's Not Them, It's You. And what that really is about is in my learnings in life, and I want to say this, I love sharing what I share because I wish that someone had shared more with me earlier in life with a lot more honesty. And you can be honest and somewhat, I guess we want to call the word direct with people without being harsh and without being unkind, right? There's a graceful way to help people become and find the leader within themselves. And so often in life, we blame shift or we respond and react to what's happening in response to other people in our lives. Well, they're doing this or they're doing that. And I was guilty. I mean, I was really hyper focused on what was happening to me or around me and how to navigate people based on how they were behaving rather than understanding what was happening for me in that relationship. And we're not taught to do that. When we read leadership books or self-help books, so often they're focused on if you want to communicate well, you need to know your client, you need to know the people you work with, you need to understand their mindset, and you need to learn to navigate them. And by the way, we started doing that as children. We first learned that with our parents. Oh, wait, I got in trouble for that thing. Wait, I said that the wrong way and I got the wrong response from my mom or my dad. I don't want that to happen again. So I need to navigate them differently. And that just carries on into our life as we continue through the developmental years. And really, empowerment comes from understanding what's happening for me in this. And this is a great story. I think a great way to kind of explain it. I have a grandson. He's 6 years old and he's wildly independent. He just really says at the age of 5, he said, I can't wait to be in charge of my own life. So if you give him, some sort of like limit or boundary, he gets mad sometimes. So he told me a couple of weeks ago, he was mad and he was like, I'm just mad. And I said, well, tell me more about what mad means, because isn't that what we all do? Someone frustrates us and we're like, I'm mad with them. I'm angry at them and I should be. Let me tell you what they did. And what they did probably was something worthy of not being happy about or being frustrated about. But when we start to look at ourselves and go, well, what does it mean for me to be mad or frustrated with this person? Okay, wait. Oh, wait, I feel really disrespected. Oh, what does that mean to be disrespected? Oh, wait. My sense of self-worth and value is being minimized by the way that they're treating me. Now, how can I communicate that in a way that doesn't just without shutting down or counterattacking? And that's really what it's not about them, it's really about you. Shift your focus on yourself and take a deep dive into what's happening for me in response to this experience I'm having with this other person. Now I say that and it sounds really easy and people go, "Oh, I can do that." We don't, it's hard. Um, it's hard. And some people say, "Well, that doesn't sound like something you do in the professional setting. That sounds more like a personal journey." Well, one of my favorite leaders in the corporate sector is Patrick Lencioni. Are you familiar with Patrick Lencioni and
A
his
little bit,
work?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and so he has written a book called The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, and I've been leading some workshops around that. And the reason I love it so much is he asked the question in The Five Dysfunctions of a Team, if you want to build honesty with your team, one of the questions you have to ask in the teamwork or in the team setting on a retreat is, what was the biggest challenge you had to overcome in childhood? Well, childhood is really the ages of 0 to 18. And if you tell me the biggest challenge you had to overcome between the ages of 0 and 18, I can tell you how you're showing up at work. And your office mates would agree. And I've done this in corporate workshops and settings, and so far I haven't been proven wrong. So, and I've done it with myself, and so I know that what I'm speaking is truth. But I feel like I have other people that support that are wildly successful, like Patrick Leoncini. So there's a frame of reference here.
Give us a couple or at least one of the major takeaways when you talk about the keynote and what you hope lands on the audience and that they take back. What are one or two takeaways?
Self-awareness, first and foremost, through understanding your own lived experiences and your own story. If you really want to build and optimize the future that you want to have personally and professionally, you've got to first look at what you've lived and what you've experienced and what that's meant for you. And I'd say, lastly, embodied leadership or living intentionally is then to take the information that you get from looking back and understanding what happened for you in the experiences that you've lived, the parts of you that have developed, and understanding the own internal conflict that you might have. You may have a part of you that helps you manage life every day and is doing it really successfully, but how are you doing it matters. And being able to understand if maybe I could do this a little differently and better and have a different kind of relationship from within myself to the parts of me that help me manage and navigate life every day, and help me understand if that made sense to you, what I just said, Jeremy. If it didn't, I can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Well, I think that leads me to give us a tip, right? So when you talk about being more centered and better understanding ourselves and how we show up and being more intentional, give us maybe one tip that will direct us in the right pathway.
Okay, I'm going to give you a tip, and it's going to sound a little weird and hokey, but it's something we normally naturally do anyway. I talk to myself a lot. And so as humans, I want to say this is a therapeutic approach I have, and this is how I integrate everything in workshops is self-awareness. And the therapeutic model that I use is called internal family systems. And basically understanding that as human beings, we're all multiple personality. We have multiple parts of us that help us get through life every day. I have a part of me that helps me get focused and on the work that I need to do, a part of me that is really fun and enjoys doing things outdoors, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So understanding your internal family system, the parts of you that live within yourself, and then having a conversation with those parts from within a very centered self that gets to understand these parts of you and help them help you better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
and the good news is I talk to myself all the time. So, but I mean, to your point though, I think, and I've always found that just saying things out loud, writing them down, like, all of those kind of things helps with accountability. But I also think through in many cases, as you're talking through a challenge or, whatever it is, conflict, opportunity, it just reinforces, but it also helps you clarify and see different sides. And in many cases, anything is complex. And so being able to kind of see the different sides with the different personalities, like that's a plus.
I like to do this. This is a daily exercise that I give to my clients, and daily exercise I like to do for myself, and is to take an experience every day that I've had and break that experience down. And it can be an experience that it was really good. It was one that I really enjoyed and I appreciated. And like, what about that was so good for me? What helped me in that experience? Or an experience that I was really challenged by. And I had one of those recently that I remember. It had like five parts of me that showed up. I had a part of me that was frustrated, a part of me that was hurt, a part of me that was disappointed, a part of me that wanted some sort of vengeance in that experience. And when I say vengeance, I meant I wanted them to see me rise up to the top in this experience, which is a good way to see yourself, right? I want to overcome this so that they can see that I actually am more worthy of this than they thought I was. And so when I took that experience and I broke down the parts of me that showed up or that I was experiencing internally, this part, this part, this part. Well, what is the conversation that this part or what are the words this part is saying to me or are saying to me? Okay, look, so I wrote a paragraph about each part. And then after that, I sat with each part, like as if I'm their mother, and I had a conversation with them like they're my children to let them know that I'm okay and that the situation is I'm going to be okay in the situation, because that's really what happens with us when we have challenging experiences in life. We have multiple parts of us that show up. We have internal conflict about how to handle the experience. And we usually go into reaction or response mode, but without sitting with ourselves and having our own internal kind of meeting, boardroom meeting, so to speak, with from a self-centered place with these parts of us. And then we're more equipped to show up and communicate with people with honesty and thoughtfulness in a way that is meaningful and creates and cultivates connection. So first we get clarity from that. So that's the practical tip I have every day, is to sit down and get to know yourself and understand what's happening when you're challenged by something, and don't just focus in on the one, well, I'm frustrated or I'm mad emotion that you have. Get to understand all the emotions that you have and consider them as parts of yourself. Learn the language that they're speaking to you, and how that may be helpful or how it might actually be creating more dysfunction and more of a challenge for you.
Well, as tennis players, we're used to talking to ourselves on the court, so all this plays out very well. We'll carry that into where we can go to learn more. So website, where do we go to learn more about you, your speaking? Where do we go to book you? So talk about those next steps and where we go.
Yeah, so my website is michellejohns.com. On Instagram, it is under the umbrella Transforming Wellness, but you could also type in Michelle Reynolds Johns and you would find my Instagram account. And for LinkedIn, it's Michelle Johns.
Well, Michelle, thank you for all you do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
All right, Jeremy, thank you so much for having me.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.